Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
So I'd like to thank Melody for coming. I didn't know if she would want to come and talk about the book or not. I heard her on the radio talking about the book, and I really like the fact that, unlike many commentators about the book, she actually read the book. So.
Listen, I have the Post-it notes to prove it. Yeah, I read the book.
And she actually took the book seriously. By that I mean she read it. She had some insights into it. She said positive and negative things, which she'll expound upon. So
Can't imagine that.
So here's Melody from Talk 1300. She has her own business, Melody Burns, idea practitioner, and she's also the editor. There's a website called redcounty.com.
Redcounty.com.
So Red State, Blue State thing. She's the Albany editor for that, so you can find her on there. So here's Melody Burns to tell us about Going Rogue in American Life by Sarah Palin.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Saturday on Talk 1300 is a weekly recap, and I was on with Kelly Stevens, and we were talking about things. And she started talking about Sarah Palin. And I said, well, did you read the book? And she said, no. And I thought, well, what the hell's wrong with you? You know, how can you comment about something if you haven't read it? And when they first started talking about the book coming out, I put my name on a list, and I said, I want to get that book. I need to tell you, I am a Republican. I'm very proud of that. I am the only Republican child out of 12. I know that was rough for my mother and father, but they got over it after all these years. My parents very Democratic. My father was a city chairman. They were involved in the state committee up north. My father was a county legislator. My mother, covered the city where I grew up, Ogdensburg, which is up on the Canadian border, walks at every election cycle, still does it. My brother took over as city chair. He's now a county legislator. One of my younger brothers is a sheriff, right on the Democratic line. I still helped him, but we don't tell too many Republicans that. So, it wasn't natural, the whole political thing. So when Sarah Palin jumped on the scene, and we saw her a lot of people saw her for the first time when she came out as a VP candidate. And right away, you either liked her or you hated her. And I found that with people, and they would say that to me, that, oh my God, she's a joke. Who is this woman? And somebody from Alaska who really doesn't know anything about the real world, which I thought was hilarious, is up here trying to run for VP. So, and then when they said, she's going to do great things and it's grassroots, and she was a woman, she was a mother, and she had a special needs child, all of a sudden everything changed. That is what the press started to focus on. And so when you read through her book, she talks a lot about those things. So how many people have read the book, by the way? No? 2 chapters? Well, that'll count. Yeah, you have it. That's okay. 2 chapters is okay. When I started the book, when I got the book, and I got it prior to it being released, I started reading the book, and in the beginning I thought, this is boring as all hell. I didn't want to know about her childhood. I wasn't interested in the moose part, and I mean, it's great to get some of the background, but I wanted to know the nitty gritty. Okay, how did you get where you are, and what are your viewpoints, and what really happened with Katie Couric? Right, and because that's the way I am. Right, you read the first 2 chapters? Stop that. Go toward the middle of the book and start reading it, because then you're going to get to what you want. The first part of the book she does. She talks about who she is, who her parents are, who her family is, why she does what she does. So you get a little bit of basic groundwork, you know what that is. But then she starts talking about running for mayor, what she does as a mayor. She also weaves in the love story that we all know about. I went to high school, we fell in love, we got married, stuff, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? I mean, if you like that, read a romantic novel. I don't, so I didn't. So that's in there. She talks about what she does as a mayor. And then she starts talking about why she ran for governor of Alaska. And at that point, you started to hate Republicans. Now, I can say that, being a Republican. But she talks about the old boy network, and I'm sure if you've ever been involved in politics, and even if you're not, you clearly understand that there is an old boy network, especially in the Republican world. We have to be honest about that. I don't lie about that. I know it's true. It's still there today. It's not a secret. Women who run for politics in the Republican and the Democratic world, you both see that. But it seemed like, as Republicans over the years, we've kind of cultivated this thing that you have to be an old guy who wears a dark suit, and you have to be a lawyer to be a Republican. And so when she came on the scene, and she starts talking about that, and then she starts talking about running, for governor. And she realizes that part of running for governor is she has to primary some of those old guys. So she starts talking about the things that they do and why she's going to be different and some of the deals that they worked out. So she goes through all of that. So in the book, you're going to figure out who's the bad guy, who's the good guy right away when she starts talking about energy. And right from the beginning, she's been pretty much pro-energy. How can we help Alaska? She's always been a grassroots girl, so the folksy thing that she has going on now is not new. It's pretty much from the get-go. And I know and part of the criticism for her is that she's too folksy. And you hear that if you heard her do the Tea Party thing over the weekend, or maybe she did Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace. You heard people say that, she's so folksy, she's still got that going. But as you read through the book, you can figure out that that's really her. Yeah, what's wrong with it? And I asked that question too. What's wrong with that? I was raised in Ogdensburg, which is up on the Canadian border, very much the frozen land, as I call it. Like Alaska, right? So we had something in common. They still have snow. We have snow up there. And, at the time, listening to her and then realizing that, up there, and when I moved down here to Albany in the early 90s, I was considered folksy, I guess, because I was not from a city, but I was from a city because Ogdensburg is a city, the only city on the Great St. Lawrence. So I was a city girl. You wouldn't know that. In the summertime, I worked at my grandfather's farm. I did hunt. We did kill animals. I wear fur, leather, stuff like that. I eat meat, so all of that stuff. Seriously, how many people don't eat meat when you think about it? But, but that was a problem. You can't eat moose because that's bad. Hello? If you ever ran into one in your car, you'd want to eat it. So, and so I thought about that stuff. But she talks about all of those things, and she lets you know, why she does the things that she does. And then you weave into how did she get to be the VP candidate? How many people in this room knew anything about her prior to that? Yeah, nobody. Isn't that funny? I knew of her because I'm politically involved and I try to follow women in politics and what they're doing. But I didn't really give much of a thought that she was going to become what she is, And really she has become, let's face it. And so then she starts talking about the whole vetting process in the book. And she shares meeting John McCain, who she respected. Now I have to be careful here because I don't like him, so I had to be careful. I thought, and as a Republican, I didn't like him. He's a rhino, and I didn't like his policies, and so they vetted her. She went to Arizona and talked to them, and then they said, okay, let's go. She's caught up in the whole thing, and so off they go. She talks about all of a sudden getting speechwriters. Finding clothes in her hotel. This is what you have to wear because that doesn't work. To me, I think that would be great because I hate my closet. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I hate it. Every day it's 3 times I change the clothes and now I'm going to wear it. But so they talk about that. They talk about changing the image of her family because not only did she get clothes, but the family got clothes. So she tells you all about that. Coming into the hotel room and all of a sudden you find racks and racks of clothes, and she's told, you have to wear these, so does Todd, so do the girls, okay? So trying to go along with the whole thing, she says, okay, I'm here, I'm your candidate, I guess I pretty much need to do that. So what are you gonna do, right? What's a girl to do? You get $70 nylons, you're gonna put them on, So she wears that stuff, okay? So she wants to be right. Yeah, that's right, she wants to be rogue, $70 nylons, I can't imagine. I'd be flipping out, I was gonna run them. But, so she does all that. She starts working with people who are now writing her speeches. And some of the people, and you don't really discover this till you start reading the book, some of the people in the campaign, in the McCain campaign, were pretty much, right from the get-go, against her. They didn't like her, and you probably heard some of that now, and she talks about that. The woman, Nicole, who she talks about a lot in the book, actually is the person that connects her to Katie Couric. And you probably heard the whole Katie Couric thing and what happened with that. Well, she explains that. She doesn't know this right out of the gate, but she finds out as she's scheduled to interview with Katie Couric. It was scheduled to be one interview in the beginning, and then she finds out that Nicole, who set it up, used to work with Katie. They were very close friends, okay? And we don't know that. You don't know that when the whole thing is going on. And you may recall seeing it on TV, and it wasn't good, it wasn't pretty, and it was bad, and it really, it did make her look, stupid. Yeah, stupid, right? So in the book, she tells you about the first time she sits down and she talks to them. And Katie asks her a whole bunch of questions, and she gives her lots of good answers. And then she wasn't really happy. Sarah wasn't happy with what happened in that interview. And she said, okay, it's over, we're done. These things happen, right? And as she's leaving the interview, some of the people working at CBS and working with Katie said, that was great. It was fantastic. Wow, this is fabulous. And so the people with McCain are going, oh, it's great. We're going to do it again because it's really going to work. But then when she thinks about it, she said, I didn't think it was that good. But it wasn't broadcast yet, right? It was just, the studio work. So Nicole comes back to her and says, Katie really needs you because you're going to boost Katie. And because you have so much in common. You're both women. You're both moms. You're both fighting the male establishment. And so Sarah, being the fool that she is, right, says, okay, I'll do it again. Yeah, but you don't know these things. You have hindsight. You don't know this. You think, okay, she's a woman. She's not going to stab me in the back. Big mistake, right? You would say, oh dear. And it's going to work. And she hadn't seen the previous interview, so she didn't know what was going to be taken from that. So they schedule another interview. It's after a huge rope line. And Sarah's walking the rope line, and she's talking to everybody and shaking hands. And there's a lot of energy, and you're wound up, and everything's great. And she goes behind the curtain, and behind the curtain is Katie Couric. And so right away, Katie starts talking to her about, well, let's talk about where do you get your information? Where do you get your information? How do you know what's going on? What do you read, right? Well, right. Do you remember that whole thing? What do you read? So you can imagine after shaking hands and talking to people and being very energized, and all of a sudden this woman's like, what do you read? What do you? And you have to stop and think, well, I don't know. I read what everybody else reads, right? Which was a mistake. She should have went through, and then Katie said, well, what do you mean you read what everybody else reads? And at this point, Sarah's kind of upset, and she said, well, I read the same thing everybody else reads. What do you read every day? And she kind of gets this whole annoying thing going. So Katie kind of pushes her a little bit further on that, and finally she comes out and she goes, I don't know, Katie, what do you read? The New York Times every day? I read the same thing, right? So, and then there's a little bit more going on there. And so what happens, that's the section that Katie pulls out of that interview. Yeah, and then they have a joint interview that she talks about with John McCain and Katie Couric. And so the three of them, and they talk about energy. And Sarah's trying to talk about energy in Alaska. And Katie asked her the question about geographic location. And Sarah, is looking at the map. And, quite often when you look at a map, where do they put Alaska? Down here in the corner by Hawaii, right? And some people, being as stupid as they are, we have to admit people are stupid, they look at a map and they think, well, this must be so. They're right, Alaska is down here by Hawaii. It's colder than hell, but it's down here by Hawaii because Rand McNally says so. So Katie starts trying to explain, Sarah's trying to explain that, Alaska is way up here, okay? When you look at Canada and you keep going north and you go west, you're going to find us. And we're on the Pacific Rim. So, of course, what's up here, right? And she tries to explain that. So then Katie really didn't want to talk about that. She lets it go. But then when Katie does the interview, it's like, I can see Russia out my window because it's right there. So that whole part is in the book. You're going to discover that. So, yeah, so it gives you a whole new meaning for be careful what you say to the press because whatever you say is not going to go out there. It's going to be something else. And they're going to sensationalize it. They're going to pick and choose the words they want, and they do that. So there's a whole section in there. And it was funny, before her book came out, the AP writers did a nice story where I call it nice, where they had 11 things. And I don't know if you saw that. They tried to tear the book apart and say some things about Sarah in there. And one of the things the AP writers talked about was that Sarah said she was against big money, big campaign money, but yet she accepted large campaign donations. Well, as you're reading through the book, those large campaign donations, $500. But you don't know that because you're led to believe that it's thousands and thousands of dollars. But I mean, she actually puts that in there, so you know that it's $500. So also going through the book, you discover that she's very, very close to her family. She's very close to her religious values, which is a problem. We've gotten, and this is my own opinion, of course, we've gotten to the point in the United States that religion shouldn't matter. And I'm a firm believer that we've lost a lot of our morals and our values. And that's pretty much why, we see the things we see. And so when she starts talking about religion, not that I quote the Bible every day, because I don't, okay? But I honestly believe that my parents beat that into me as a child. So I could see where she was coming from, that religion was her backbone. And that's pretty much how she went through her life, is she lived that way. And so she talks about all of those things, and she talks about praying for different things. And so she ties that to things that she does. And there's a part of the book where she's talking about her son, and you notice that she was a Blue Star mom, so her son was in the military. She talks about when her son decides that he's going to go in the military and what he's going to do. And so she asked him at certain points in the book to pray with her, over some of the things that were going on. So there's a little bit of a personal insight into that part of her. Maybe things that you didn't know about her before. You get that little side point where people say she's a religious fanatic, because she says, I pray, or we talk about prayer, or we bend our knee every now and then, or my kids pray every night. But then once you read through the book, you're going to find out why that is. Another part that they talk about is the big controversy. You may remember this during the campaign. The baby isn't hers, it's her daughter's baby. Do you remember that? I mean, that was and somebody fed that story and that went crazy, because they showed the baby all the time, and you thought that. And that's what she talks about that. She talks about being pregnant for the son. And she talks about making that decision, because she was governor at the time. She found out that she was pregnant. Tad was off fishing because he was working for a living. And she finds out that, this child is going to be born with Down syndrome. So she has to make that decision. What do I do at this point? It's easy to say, I'm going to get rid of it. It's more difficult to say, I'm going to live with it the rest of my life. And so she chose that. So quite often there's, you hear where that's an issue of the campaign, that she's trying to make other women, and I think one of the points that was made somewhere, so one of the reporters brought up to her that if a young girl was raped by her father, or raped by some raving lunatic, you would say she'd have to keep the baby no matter what. She needs to have the pregnancy. And it would be illegal for her to get it. And Sarah says, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I hope she would choose life for the child and then put it up for adoption. But the reporter kept going back to, oh, no, you're saying it would be illegal. And they couldn't get off that thing, and she kept saying that. And then for a while when she was running, you had the women who are feminists out on the side who were saying that. She is taking away the woman's right to choose because she's saying that you have to go through it no matter what. The way I look at it is that's not what she's saying at all. She's saying that the woman does have the right to choose, that it's her choice to make that decision, not somebody else to tell me what I can do with it. But it's my choice to say, I'm going to decide this way, and then I'm going to decide what happens. Because either way, as a woman, you have to live with that the rest of your life, your decision. So, the way I look at it is she's more, I call it pro-choice, because it's you make the choice. But yeah, you have to live with that. So she goes through all of those things with there. You find out more about her family, how supportive they are, what her husband does. He's been called the shadow governor many times. And I think they're doing that again. I think someone recently released some emails or something. I don't know. Did you see that?
Information that would maybe just be kept by the person running, but she involved her husband with all the emails.
Right.
They thought it might be confidential.
Yeah, but the way I looked at that is, don't you talk to your spouse about things? My poor husband, I feel sorry for him because he's my sounding board, It's just him and I and the two dogs. And the dogs could care less, and he has to listen to me. So, so there's a lot of that going on. But she talks about Todd. I'm sorry?
Does he know that?
He knows it after this many years. And he's still there, Yeah, he recently was sick and he was in the hospital, and so I was home talking to myself and writing notes, and then I'd bring the notes in the hospital to tell him, and he'd say, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, I had to write it down because I don't want to forget when I come to yell at you about it, you know." So, he did. All right, that's enough. He's fine now. Medication's doing him wonders.
Is he accumulating all this to use later on in life?
I don't know. Come on, he loves me. You know, he's still there. He loves me. So yeah. But yeah, so she talks about that whole thing about being a shadow governor and how she relied on him as her partner, you know, and they worked together through the whole thing, not only in the family, but in what she was doing. I mean, when you think about it, when you run for political office, first of all, it's a full-time job doing that. I ran for office a few years ago. I wasn't successful, but 9 months out of our life, I was running for office. And that was on a small scale, on a town board scale. So I can imagine, you know, running for mayor and then going governor and then taking that step to VP, you know, so it does consume you. And everything you do is looked at. So she talks about all of the little things that they kept bringing up, you know, and why she did it. And then you finally discover toward the end of the book why she quit, because now everyone is calling her a quitter and saying, you know, she quit, she wanted to get out of it easy, she thought it was too hard. Completely wrong. As you're reading through the last few chapters, a lot of what happened to her was every time she did something, somebody slapped her with a lawsuit. Yeah, and you'll find that. Even they're crazy little lawsuits. There was this woman that was, even when she was back as mayor, and she talks about, her name is Andre, even when she was mayor and then she ran for governor, this woman was doing everything she could to cause problems. She was one of these people that, you know, would get her on the telephone and be on there for hours and hours. You know who I'm talking about? You put the phone down and go do something else. And you come back and they're still there at the same conversation. Well, that's what this woman was, and she was constantly doing that. So when she came back after losing the election, this woman started doing that. Anything that was going on, you know, and they started digging through people that could find things that were going wrong in Alaska. You know, saying that she abandoned Alaska while she was running. She wasn't paying attention to what the people needed. She was more concerned with the national and more concerned with Sarah. You know, she was running her family all over the country, and Alaska was paying for that. So all of that is in there. And so she decides after going through that and looking at the legal bills, and in the state of Alaska, it would not pay for her legal bills, so she would be solely responsible for that. So, you know, you're going 500,000, 600,000 every day, and you had to fight those. You know, you can't just let them grow. You have to fight those. So finally she said, you know what, we cannot, as a staff, trying to work in Alaska, work. So in order to make this happen, I'm going to have to step back and say, I'm out of it. So, you know, she talked to her son, who was in Iraq at the time. She talked to her family. She talked to her husband about it. She talked to her mom and dad. She talked to some real close friends. And they all, you know, after saying, oh, no, you can't, they saw it from her point of view. And she said, I will, I did. So she resigns. And right away, there's, you know, you hear the critics said, oh, she's a quitter. But then I think what happened was, what really missed a lot of people, is that when she got up there on the stage for the first time, and the first time we saw her and she came out there, she started a whole movement, a very different movement than we've had before, because she came from the grassroots, you know. She stood up there, she said what she wanted to say. She said some of the things we've all wanted to say for a long time, but didn't want to get up there and say it in public because we were afraid. And she started people thinking, holy cow, if she can do it, why can't I? And, you know, and now you're finding that, for example, the Tea Party movement really, I think, came out of her, you know, and out of the movement from the McCain camp. Let's face it, McCain screwed her. I mean, if you like John McCain, I'm sorry. But it was a bad choice for her. And they were not good partners. And I think that when you're reading through that section of the book, you will discover that they stepped on her constantly. She started something growing during the campaign. And people were energized when they were coming, you know. Really, John had the basic blah, 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 blah. Here I am. She gets up there. She's giving them a reason to think, wow, it's going to be different. You know, there is hope. And she was taking the spotlight. Let's face it, she was stealing the spotlight from him. And so all of a sudden his people said, wait a minute, this is not good. So they wouldn't let her talk to reporters. And even on the airplane, she has to stay up front. The press corps is in the back of the plane. She stays up front. And what happened was her daughter, Piper, that cute little girl, who was just adorable. She would run back and give the reporters her side of the story every day. So it was kind of interesting to see that. She would recap what happened to Mommy, and so they were trying to write down things that she was saying, and so she talks about that and how they liked her, and the reporters would actually seek this little girl out, to get her information. So, yeah, but I think that was a big thing. I think that if they would have let her kind of go off and do what she was doing and bring more people into the fold, I think John McCain would have had a better chance. I think it would have made him a little more closer to our level than where he was. So, yeah. Overall, it's a good book. Like I said, beginning is kind of slow, but it does lay some groundwork. It gives you some information about who she is, her family values, her grandparents, very much tied to Alaska and very much tied to the land. A little bit into the energy part, what she was doing. Tells you how she went to college. She got a degree in journalism. Her parents in Idaho, so you get a lot of background. And then it kind of swings into I'm the mayor and this is what I did, but it goes back and forth. It's kind of like, I don't know, if you read it, you notice there's a little bit of like flashbacks. You'll be in one time and then she'll go back, but when I did this, we did this. So that there's some ties to her, decisions at that point. I recommend it. I recommend it not only on the basis that it's a good political read, it gives you some insight into politics and really what it's like. It's not as clean as we think it is, or as we hope it is. It really is dirty. It has that name for a reason. What's that? I'm sorry? Politics dirty. Well, dirty and nasty. Yeah. It's a surprise. I didn't mean to shock you on that, but yeah. Ta-da! It's like an aha moment,
I'll tell you the definition of politics.
Go ahead.
You want me to hear you?
Yeah, we do.
You know what politics are?
No, can you say this on camera?
I'll tell you. What
Stand up.
politics is.
Yep.
Made up of two words. Politics. One of many blood-sucking leeches.
I've never heard that before, but that's very good. That's very nice. We'll remember that.
You can record that out.
Yeah. What's your address so they can come and visit you? Yeah. You'll start getting notices in the mail.
Write another book going Rogue too.
Yeah. Rogue, yeah. And Sal asked me about that when we were talking in the back of the room. Why did I think she titled it Going Rogue? Well, I think she titled it Going Rogue for a number of reasons. One, because she was a woman entering unknown territory. Even though Hillary had been out there, and what? No. Go ahead. It was a whole different thing, right? Yeah, and right, same old stuff. I think you were right. She was towing the line, and then you got Palin, who was not. She was kind of out there. The other was she was constantly fighting who was supposed to be on her side. Not only the Republicans, but the McCain camp. I mean, and you learn more about that. The more you read through the book, chapter after chapter, you're going to see where they kept stepping on her and doing that. And so, and then also taking the step of saying, you know what, I'm in a cushy position. I'm the governor of the state of Alaska. I have great popularity. I'll probably be here. I can stay here for a while. Because people forget, basically the voters are stupid, let's face it. We see it all the time. They go up and down. They think, okay, they think you're great, and next week they hate you, but they come back, and you can promise them something, and they'll remember that and say, they promised me, so they're going to do it. And so, she thought that I could do that. But then she said, you know what, I'm going to be very much against that. I'm going to leave. I'm going to pull out early and say that, you know what, this is not right for me. I'm going to go against what everybody thinks. I'm going to do that. I think she had a great idea for herself. I think she has changed the political future because she has brought more people into the mix. You now see more people involved in politics than we've ever seen before. I think she has also, the way we do things is different. The way we look at things is a lot different. I think people are starting to question where we didn't question a lot of things in the past with politics. The way that people raise money, I think, has changed. In the past, we didn't pay that much attention to where politicians got their money from. You didn't know, you didn't care, it didn't matter. All you knew is you kept getting all these nice, beautiful things in the mail, and you got the robocalls, and you saw the ads on TV, and you saw all that stuff. And now you start thinking about it, holy cow, where are they getting that money? How does that work? We started thinking about the way media looks at things. For years, depending on what station you watch, you pretty much believe that. And I still see people that do that. They don't watch other channels. And I know this is a surprise to many people. I don't just watch Fox. I flip through all the other ones. And most people don't believe that. Granted, because I like a comedy every now and then, so I flip through those. But, I want to be well-rounded, and I want to see what's out there, so I know what's going on. But, so I think that's a big thing. I think we started to look at that. We started to make choices on that. And I think she's also made the average Joe, like Joe the plumber plays into there. Tito the builder plays into the story, and you'll read about them. I think the average Joe now has hope that they didn't have before. They have a voice. So I think she's brought that out there. And, it's a long book. Seems like it's a long book. There are pictures in the middle, so if you like pictures. Some people like pictures, I don't know. But there are pictures. They're like family pictures and, the whole romance story and some nice pictures of Alaska. So, you'll get that in there. She's done very well on her book tour. She's covered huge ground. She's in very big demand, as you know. Now become a Fox contributor. I call her the queen of the Tea Party movement because I think she actually did start that. If you listened to her the other day and you heard some of the clips from the Tea Party, and you heard her talk to Chris Wallace on Fox News, he asked her that question about, are you going to run in 2012? I tend to believe that she's going to be bigger than that, that running for president would be too small for her. I do. I think because she has become...
She's a brand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she is a brand.
Yeah.
Between Facebook, Twitter, all of those things, she's become that. And I think that, people you either definitely hate her, and there's no way you're going to swing over to this side, or you like her, and no matter what she does, you're going to like her.
I'm going to drive a Palin.
You're going to drive a Palin?
Yeah, I am.
You are? Well, let me tell you something. I am probably the only person still in the Capital District that has the Palin Power sticker on my car. And I drive it around. And that's how when I go in a parking lot, everybody's driving a white Jeep now, I just look for my Palin Power sticker and it helps me.
Aren't you afraid your tires are going to be slammed?
No, and you know what, it's
Well,
funny.
I don't keep one on.
Oh, come on, you know what, I'm proud of it. And it's funny because when McCain and Palin were running, I met some friends for lunch in downtown Albany. Scary, right, for a Republican. So I parked my car in this parking lot, and on the back of my car, I had the Palin Power sticker, and I had McCain and Palin sticker on the window. And we come out from lunch, and the McCain-Palin sticker was gone. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? But they left the Palin sticker on. So I thought, oh no, this is terrible, right? And my friend's like, you gonna call the cops? What are you gonna do? I'm like, in Albany? To tell them that a McCain Palin? What are you, crazy? Right? Some other place maybe, but not Albany. They'd arrest me for having the Palin sticker on the car. So I stood there for a minute and I said, well, maybe they threw it around, threw it on the ground somewhere. So I had these two friends walking around, looking underneath cars, looking in bushes. They're crazy, they love me. And they're like, oh, it's not here, it's not here. I thought, well, this is awful, and I couldn't get another sticker. It was too close to the election. I was so upset, I took a lawn sign and put it on my car. But then, they were plastic this year, so you could do that. They weren't the heavy corrugated ones. So it was funny, a friend of mine, 2 days later, sent me an email. And she said, oh, I saw your car in the parking lot in Albany. And she said, were you missing something? And I said, I was. She said, I have it on my refrigerator. And the funny thing is, she's a good Democrat. And I said, what are you doing that in your house? You took it out my window. She goes, well, I did it as a joke to my kids. And I said, well, okay, I guess I'll let you have it. But it was a strange thing. But my Palin Power sticker is still on the car. And I proudly display that. And I actually saved the lawn signs and wrapped all of my family's Christmas presents in them. Because I figured, why not, right? What are you going to do with them? They're not going to run again together. So yeah, because they were like a poly bag. So those were my gift bags that I use at Christmas time. So it worked out real well for me. So yeah. Yeah, that's the way I am. That's frugal. Well, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you ever mention her daughter in the book?
Yes. The question was, did she ever mention her daughter, the pregnant daughter?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. She does talk about her daughter. She talks about all of them, Willow, Bristol, Piper, and her sons. And her daughter at the time, as you know, was pregnant during the campaign. And part of that whole thing was, how can she say that, this is good or this is bad when she's got a teenage daughter who's pregnant over here. And then, of course, the boyfriend came out who was a real whack job, wasn't he? Yeah, doesn't he do that? Yeah. I mean, he was out there buffing up because he was doing a centerfold for whatever magazine it was. But yeah, so she talks about that. And some people were saying, well, how can you say what you're saying, you know, that sex education is great, but yeah, here you've got a daughter, you know, who's done this, I guess, let's face it, she did it. And I think Oprah talks about that after. But, you know, and she said that her daughter came to her and her husband and said, you know, Mom and Dad, I made a mistake, I'm pregnant, but I'm going to live with it. You know, realizing that she had to. And she said she felt very bad for her daughter, realizing that her life had changed. You know, that she's not going to have the childhood that, you know, she needed at that point. But she was also very supportive of that. So she does talk about that whole thing. And it's funny, she's still getting that. You know, you still hear them talk about that. I think, like Oprah not too long ago had them on, and they're talking about, you know, because the daughter was saying, you know, not that I would have aborted, but I wish it would have happened 10 years from now. And, you know, and so they've been scrutinizing that whole thing. But yeah, well, you know how it is with your kids. You wish for the best, but they're going to do what they want to do. You know, I mean, you have to, no matter how much you beat it through their heads, because we all did what we wanted to do. Yeah.
She never mentions the boy's name, though.
Which boy? Levi John. She doesn't mention his name in there. You're right.
His name is never mentioned. She only talks about the daughter, what happened, and their side of life.
Yeah.
Him.
Well, she talks about, you know, toward the end of the book, she talks about some of the problems with him. You know, how he's gone to the press. You know, and how he's saying some of the things she did. She never shot a moose, or she never, you know, she does, but she doesn't mention him by name.
Not giving him any credibility.
Which is good, and she should. You know, I think that was a wise decision. Yeah, I clearly would not have put his name in there.
Going on Oprah was a...
You know what, I got to tell you, when I heard she was going on Oprah to peddle this book, I sent her a note, and I said, why? And secondly, do you realize Oprah is using you? Because when she was on Oprah's show, Oprah got the biggest boost she ever got from any other show.
Oprah was using her?
Yeah.
She was using Oprah.
No, I think it's the other way up.
A little bit of both.
You think a little bit of both? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that, you know, I would have said to Oprah, screw you, basically. You know, because she didn't need Oprah to, is the way I looked at it. She didn't need it, but, you know, and part of her publishers probably said, you know what? Oprah has a huge market. You may be able to win some people over, and so you should go on Oprah. So, yeah, I think it was a two-way street, but I think Oprah used her more.
You were the only Republican in a family of 10.
Because Coric is a backstabber. Oprah once, I don't watch Oprah. I used to watch it years ago when my child was little and I stayed home.
When it was on, the TV was on, you were watching
but,
it.
the Coric thing is vicious. That is so disingenuous, and that was a backstabbing thing. And she was naive at that point.
Oh, very much
but
so.
Oprah is different.
Yeah.
I mean, I may not agree with her politics.
Yeah.
But I think she's a decent human being, and I think it was both. And by that time, Sarah Palin probably recognized that she would get a wider audience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that was part of it.
That was a much smarter move.
Yeah, she was trying to win over some of those people. Yeah. She wasn't going to win with Katie Couric. It wasn't going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. Wait a second, we have to go over here.
Yes, I don't know that I represent these kind of people, but I suspect they're a lot like me. I saw Sarah Palin in a few instances on the TV, and she came across as ignorant and stupid.
Yeah.
She came across that way. I didn't pursue it. I just dropped her.
You thought that was it?
Yeah. No, much later, after the whole election, everything was over, I heard her talking on TV, and she was talking very intelligently about the subject, and I thought, now, either she's had a lot of training since then, or something else has happened. It wasn't the same woman that came across so stupid at the beginning.
But I think that she talks to that in the book, when she talks to the issue with the McCain staffers telling her what she can say and what she should be doing. And she tries to explain that because she does come off, and I felt this sometimes in some of the interviews that I watched, that she did come off too folksy and too, you know, I don't really know that, but let me give you this answer because it sounds nice. And, you know, my mother would call me and say, I can't believe I raised a daughter that likes this woman. You know, because my mother would say, my God, she's nothing but an ignorant woman and she makes us all look bad. I'd be like, but Mom,
She came across very
Yeah,
badly.
and I think that there was a lot of people, and there are still people that feel that way. That
My feeling was
Yeah.
she's done a lot of learning since then. She's the type that would.
Well, you know what? She had to. The way I looked at it was, she came from Alaska, you know, which is a quarter of the United States, basically. It's a huge state, right? She came from Alaska where you know the person that lives across the street and you talk like you'd talk normally, and all of a sudden you're thrown into the world of politics where every syllable has to be a certain way, you know, and she wasn't up on the game. So she wasn't polished. Right, she wasn't polished. And so now as you see her, she's become polished. And now she has a team of people that help her, you know, that kind of give her the inside information. I mean, let's face it, when you're in the political arena, if you're in it every day, you're going to get people who are going to feed you information and you're going to know what's going on. But when you're on the outside coming in, you don't know all those little players and the tidbits. So, you know, I'm sure in the beginning, to people who weren't going to buy into the story, she did come off as being somewhat
I got the impression that she's a quick learner. I'm not sure I like the way she learned or her reasons for learning.
You're just not going to like her no matter what we do.
But she's a quick learner.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think she is a quick learner.
Yeah.
I think in that situation you have to be a quick learner. Wait, we had one in the back.
Can you share some of your thoughts about your perspective, how she would be as a leader, either in business or in politics, some of the traits that you've picked up from her personality after reading the book, what she brings to the table, for example?
Yeah. Well, you know, I like her honesty. I like her down-home approach. You know, I like that. I like the fact that, you know, she brings it back to her, and she looked at things and how would this affect my family and what impact would that have? Not from the point of, I've always had a driver, I've always had this. You know, she's had to work her way through. So I think in a way, I look at that as, okay, this is the way I was brought up. So, you know, I have that thing going, you know, I can closely relate to her. I think she brings that, that's a plus as coming in. I think her willingness to listen to people, you know, not to the point of being controlled, but to listen to people so that she can make a good decision. And you don't see a lot of that during the campaign, but you're starting to see that now. You're starting to see that, you know, she's open. She's open to understanding that it takes a lot of people to give you information so you can grow your base of information. I don't know if she'd make a good president. I'm kind of on the fence with that. I'm also at the point where now when I listen to her, she's starting to do a lot of sound bites. She's starting to become the politician I hate, which bothers me. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you saw the Chris Wallace segment on Fox News Sunday, some of her answers became sound bites. You know, almost like somebody was writing it down for her saying, well, if you say this, they're going to say, oh, yeah. And I didn't want that. I wanted a Sarah Palin who was back to the way she was, where, you know, if she didn't know something, I want her to say to me, you know, I don't really know, but I'm going to look into that and, you know, let me get back to you and see what I can do. I'm not quite sure where she's going because, you know, she is working with a lot of candidates. She's backing a lot of candidates. She's actually working with John McCain. Now, you can't say one thing in the book and then do another thing as far as I'm concerned. If she felt that, you know, they were trying to put the screws to her and it wasn't where she wanted to go, and in fact that he was a rhino and that he wasn't true to the values, and now all of a sudden she turns around and says, well, I'm going to help get him reelected, that scares me. So I'm on the fence. I like her as a person. I like the fact that she came out as a woman in politics and took the chance, you know, and stands up for what she believes in. But I'm also worried that what's going on now is going to change her. You know, she's going to be a different Sarah Palin than the original Sarah Palin.
She's falling into syndrome.
I think that happens. And and that's what I think it
in
is.
politics, it's almost impossible to stay in politics, be active in politics, and not have any of it rub off on you. It's almost impossible.
But you know what? I wouldn't mind that if some of the good stuff rubbed off, but I don't want all the trash that goes with it. You know, and you look at our politicians and they get in and it becomes a career. And that's not what I want. And you know, and I don't know if she's headed that way or what, I don't know. So I don't know if she'll run in 2012. I I don't know, and I don't know if I'd vote for it.
I didn't finish the whole book yet, but
Okay.
I loved the first part where she goes into her background and her family. I think that's very important to know about a person, what they believed in as a child, how they grew up. I think that is extremely important, not boring. I also don't think that she is the kind of person, for example, I feel very deceived about our president right now because I'm reading the book Change, and he led me to believe that all the money he got was from the little people,
Good job.
And I read in the book Change that this is all based on fact and interviews. These two authors said he met with George Soros many times and got tons of money from this man who wants to destroy our country, George Soros.
Yeah.
So I like Sarah Palin. I think she's honest, and I like her folksiness. This is what I like about her. She's more like the average person, and not a typical politician that I don't like.
But there's a question: is her popularity going to change her between now and?
I think it will. It
Yeah.
has.
I think it has to some extent.
But she has really become the cheerleader of the Republican conservative movement.
Right.
And she's out there cheering for the guys. And I love the fact that she's not a lawyer.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? You know, I hear that all the time.
I just love it.
Yeah, I hear
Because
that.
that's where Washington is today.
Yeah.
And no matter
But it's not just Washington. Look down the hill.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Let's look down the street.
And no matter what your intentions
Yeah.
are, when you get to Washington, Washington changes you.
Oh, yeah.
Because you start to compromise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the game.
Yeah. Well, but that's because we've let them do that. I mean, and
Sure.
you know, I talk to people all the time about politics, and when you think about it, it's like, and they constantly complain about our politicians. And then I say, but we've let them do this to us. We don't pay attention to our budgets. And I ask people, how many people are aware of what your town budget? Look at your local level. Do you know what your town budget is? And people will say, no. Have you ever gone to the hearing for that? No. We're going to pay taxes anyway. And I think, how could you be so stupid? That if you don't participate, then they're going to do whatever they want to do. And we've kind of let them do that. And so now, all of a sudden now, we're starting to speak up and say, whoops, wait a minute. This isn't right. Now we need to stand up and say, but have we gotten to the point where is it going to do any good? I don't know. Yes.
When it became difficult to be governor and she left, what is she going to do when she's president? It gets difficult.
Yeah, but I think that'll be different because when you become president, you won't be sued. She's being sued by every little thing.
There's such serious problems.
As president?
She doesn't
Yeah.
handle any of them.
But do you think that the president actually does anything? No, I mean, I didn't mean that. No, I mean, seriously.
It's a figurehead.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. When you get up to that point, I mean, you've got...
He has two cabinets, not just one like every other president.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little different. You're just kind of going out there, and this president, and now I'm swinging into my real political side, has become a real, he is a commercial, a day-to-day commercial, because he's constantly, we constantly see him. I don't recall seeing any other president as much as I have this guy. I could tell you on Tuesday what color tie he wore. Do you know what I mean? And you never saw that before with the president. You got the information in a different source. Granted, things have changed because we are, television-wise and internet, but this guy, every day, he's got his face out there. I don't want to see him.
He's in commercials that he shouldn't have no business in.
Right, you're right.
The subject matter, the topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would rather he stayed in the White House and did something. Yeah, but that's, that's the way it's going.
I think the role of the presidency today is to form coalitions. And unfortunately, the occupant of the White House hasn't learned that yet.
Yeah.
And I personally don't feel he was able to do that because his background, to me, doesn't suggest that he's learned that lesson in his preparations to get where he is today. He's had handouts.
Right.
He hasn't really held a real job. He's never made a payroll in a small business.
Right.
Right? He hasn't done anything.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point.
In a small business and small government and other small offices, you'll learn how to form coalitions to move your agenda forward and to please other people and to work with other people.
Right.
He hasn't done that yet.
It does make a difference. And it's funny because I am the Republican chair for the town of Bethlehem. I'm really political. And Yeah, I don't hide it. You couldn't tell that? Yeah. And so I'm the Republican chair. We were in the process of searching for a judge for Senate, for Congress, for Assembly, right? So people come to me because I have to interview them and say, you're a jerk or maybe you're not. And so part of my questioning is to them, do you know what it's like to sit down at your kitchen table and look at a stack of bills and say, today, I can't pay this one? And if you don't know what that's like, I don't want you representing me. I don't want you sitting there at a desk, whether in Albany or any place, making a decision about my future, if you don't know what it is to have to figure that out day by day. And some people look at me and say, well, don't you think that's kind of weird? And I say, no, it's not. Because, it's almost like that old thing, you have to walk in my shoes to some extent. I mean, you have to know, if you've always had money, and you've always had somebody working on you, and you haven't had to worry about meeting that bottom line and realizing that I can't spend today, because if I spend it today, I'm not going to have it tomorrow. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. We've been spending like crazy, and we never had it. And we don't have it. And so I want that person now, even at that level, as my local senator or congressperson, that they can think about that. They can sit back and say, when she went in on November 3rd and voted for me, she realized then that I'm spending her money. And that's really what it is. Because they don't think about that. And when you talk to people, and usually, when I go to a political debate and I ask that question, whose money are you spending? And some of them will look at you like, what are you, stupid? It's the government's money. And I've heard that so many times. I'm like, hello, my pockets are empty because you're spending my money. And so you have to make them think about that.
One other thing, you pick up on what you're saying. I've had an argument the other day with somebody about what's happening, what's going on, and reminding everybody that there's two kinds of people in this world, assets and liabilities.
Yep.
Assets are the people who actually work, produce products, produce goods and services, and make the country work. Liabilities are all the people who hold elected offices.
Yep, that's a good point.
Unfortunately, our politicians...
Is he political or what?
Our politicians have milked us to a point where it's about time we all stood up, and that's, I think, is very evident in her book.
Yeah.
That we stand up and say, hold it, no mas, that's it, no more,
right.
no more. And when you look at it, every society in the history of man has lasted about 400 years until it decayed. We are in the 300 year of a society. If we don't make some drastic changes the way we have our politicians who are supposed to be working for us,
right.
If we don't make some changes that they understand that they are liabilities, we are not going to be, our children's children are not going to be here in 100 years.
Well, look at the debt we
America
struck
will be
from
gone.
Yeah.
Now, Obama's doing a great job today with his progressive attitude, trying to make all that happen. And somebody said the question is, what does he do? Well, he's got enough levels between them, he can blame anybody.
Well,
I delegate blame.
Right.
I didn't do anything. I delegate blame to everybody else.
Yeah.
But my problem is, we are in the 300 of a 400-year society. And if we don't all wake up, talk to our kids, talk to our families about politics, and who we are electing and why we are electing,
right.
Not just because they went and brought, like Mary Landrieu in Louisiana, $300 million on top of the $72 billion they gave them
right.
for the storms down there. They finally threw Ray Nagin out of office the other day.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
It was great.
Too late.
And then this guy in Nebraska, he gets his money right up, and then they're all crying because a Republican won Ted Kennedy's seat. It's not Ted Kennedy's seat.
Yeah.
It's the seat of the people of Massachusetts. You got to do that in New York too.
But and Scott Brown wasn't the first. Remember, that's the third of those changes when you think about it. So I mean, there in itself, as the movement is, it's things are going. People are changing. They're starting to become more involved. I think that we're actively participating in politics.
That book points it out very well.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's almost like this book is the movement. Right. And I think a lot of people that won't read it are afraid of the movement.
That's right.
So that's why they shy away from it.
Did she talk about term limits in her book? Like I said, the book is on order, and
She doesn't really talk about the term limits in that.
Because that's another problem.
Well, it's a big problem.
Politicians give lip service to it, and then when they're in, they say, oh, I never said that, or, well, I have to reevaluate.
Yes.
And then you've got the career politicians. They lie anyway.
Well, yeah.
and it's, just to get in.
Yeah.
And, oh, yeah, I believe in term limits, and I really shouldn't be here, but then,
But you should reelect me anyway because, yeah.
Right, but I was wondering if she had anything to say.
Yeah, she doesn't really talk about that. I don't recall term limits being a big issue in the. Yeah, I don't think there was a big section in that. It was more about why she made the decisions that she made. What was going on internally in the McCain camp. That not only was she struggling with the outside world, but she had to deal with what was going on inside. And that camp, the McCain camp, pretty much gave up a few weeks prior to the election. Like they didn't come to New York. Why would, maybe a blue state, but I think they should still, visit every state because we're all supposed to be represented by them. So, even if you have to whirl by at midnight, stop in and say, hey, what's going on? And, so she talks about their decisions on some of that, so you get a lot. The book is very eye-opening to the level on a presidential campaign that you wouldn't normally get. You get here's a picture book of the White House and it's beautiful and we have a garden and whatever. But this actually gives you kind of the down, deep and dirty, what's going on at a level that many of us will never get to. And so that's why I thought it was such a good book to read. I think that you'll find with this book that if you've never read a political book before, this may send you on the way to start reading more. If there are more books that are similar or that, at least broach the subject. You said no?
I think that's the best thing you said all afternoon. I've enjoyed everything you said. That's the tops. That's
Yeah.
your soundbite right there.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's true. And I tell people that. If you've never, ever read a political book, pick it up and read it. And then you're going to want to read more. It's going to make you thirsty to get more information because really I think that the whole election thing, let me tell you this. My husband was talking to these people that he works with. They're young kids, right? And this was prior to the election. And they were talking about voting. And, they're saying, well, I don't really have to vote. It doesn't really matter if you vote or not. And my husband says, well, why is that? And the one girl says, well, because of the election college. And he said, the election college? She said, yeah, all the colleges get together and they decide who the election is. And I thought, what the hell are we teaching kids in school? Really, can you imagine? Oh, yeah. The other day I heard this news snippet. And the news snippet was, and then I guess we have to wrap it up, but the news snippet was North Carolina schools are changing the way they teach history in the middle and the high school. The history would not start until the 1880s. They wouldn't start teaching it until then. And so I thought, well, what the hell happened to all that stuff before? How did we get there? And I thought it was the strangest thing. So I went online to the Charlotte Observer, and I thought, I got to find somebody because I'm nuts. I got to talk to somebody. So I called this woman on the school board for the state of North Carolina. And I said, I was having to watch this news snippet, and I saw a story that North Carolina was changing the syllabus for high school and middle school social studies. And that all of a sudden, the United States didn't really become anything until 1880. And I wondered, what happened to the Declaration of Independence, our forefathers? What happened to the Civil War? How do you teach history without all of that stuff in there? And she says, well, our focus, and I thought, here it comes. Our focus is more on the modern day history because our students need to know about things such as climate change. I said, oh, gee, right? I said, don't go any further. It's not going to work. So, it was it just blew my mind that we're not getting that. What are we doing? And we're like way off the subject, by the way. But what is going on with that? So yeah, we have to close, right? Because we probably used half your day. Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.